Welcome back to the Ready Room. I'm your host, Brent Rutemeller, and every week we like to bring you exclusive interviews with people who have made an impact or are making an impact on aquatic sports. And today we have with us Mary Kelly Spitzer, 1952 Olympian, and also a national championship coach, 1961, produced 5 Olympians over the course of her career, and recently inducted into the American Swim Coaches Association Hall of Fame. Thanks for joining us, Mary.
Thank you.
Well, what a great treat for us to visit with you. And let's go back into your career. 1952, you were 18 years old, and you're an Olympian.
That's right.
18 years, that was kind of the end of the lifespan for swimmers at that time.
Oh, yes, especially for girls, because there wasn't really any place to go after that. Generally, you just finished high school, and there were no college teams to speak of, certainly not for serious swimming. So it was very difficult to keep on going. A very few girls did, but very, very few.
Now, I understand you started swimming at age 14. That's a late start for swimming.
Well, in those days, there really wasn't any age group program to speak of. There may have been some few around, and a little bit in country clubs, but that was pretty much when girls, if they were going to swim, might start swimming. Yes.
You know, from 14 to 18, and then you come back from Helsinki. You actually won the Olympic trials. You were USA Swimming's top seed in the 100 backstroke.
Yes.
And I guess there was another swimmer. Was it Kelly? Was it
Barbara Starks? Yes,
okay.
Was the number 2. She was a bit younger. She was 15 and coming on strong, and she did better at the Olympics than I did. And she managed. She got 5th.
Now, during that time, your coach was a gentleman named Jim Campbell.
Yes.
And I was trying to look for records on him, and he must have had a major influence on you. But earlier, you and I were talking, and you felt that perhaps he never really got his just dues as a coach through the years. But talk a little bit about his influence.
He was an amazing coach and very innovative. For example, he had us doing the butterfly kick, dolphin kick, just practicing. There was no butterfly at that time.
Yeah, so this is 1951. So you had 3 strokes, that's all you're swimming.
That's right. But in training, we did a lot of, he felt that it helped us adapt our bodies to the water and be part of the water. And when 1956 came and the first butterfly at the Olympics, his swimmer and my former teammate, Shelley Mann, won the 100-meter butterfly. Just took off. So a very innovative coach. He was a bit eccentric and didn't always get along with the powers that be in swimming. He locked horns good bit with officials and other people in the management apparatus, and which I think is one reason that he's not remembered.
Well, we might want to talk more about him as we go into this interview. But so you come back from Helsinki and you continue for another year.
Yes.
And you at 19, you decide that you no longer want to. Well, are there more opportunities for you?
Yes.
Okay.
And went on with life. I married and moved to Philadelphia, and had, no intention of swimming. Masters swimming didn't exist at that time, and had not even thought about coaching. But the first summer that I was in Philadelphia, 1954, I was asked to work with a small group of girls at a suburban swim club.
No, were you asked to swim? Or?
Well, first I was asked to swim, and I said, no, I'm sorry, but I've hung up my suit for good. And
now, did that decision, was that influenced by Jim in some way?
Oh, yes. He was. That was one of his major points, was that when you're finished swimming, you don't get back up on that starting block unless you're prepared. That it's you're doing swimming a disservice, to an insult to the sport if you get up on a starting block and you're not prepared. And I was certainly not prepared, so I.
So if you're not prepared, you're done. You're done. You don't look back.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
So you made the decision you're not going to swim again,
yeah,
but the opportunity.
And then the man who was asking me to please help out, please swim, I said, I'll do anything. You know, I'd love to help out with some way. And he said, good, come and work with the girls that I have gathered together. He was not a girls' coach. He just coached boys. And helped me get them ready for this big swimming meet that was coming up.
Okay.
So I went out. I had 3 weeks, which of course said nothing, but I had
it's a microcycle. But,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I don't even remember how they did. They couldn't have done well because they just didn't.
Well, let's put that in perspective, because that's a summer league program, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the 1950s. World War II just ended. Where was swimming on a national basis at that time?
Very good in men's swimming, and that's because the men had college to go, and there were leagues and so forth for boys. And of course then college swimming, and that was where they reached their peak, and so the American swimmers did very well internationally. But the women were just spotty, 1 or 2. We didn't do particularly well.
Was swimming growing across the nation?
Well, I think that what happened, there was a kind of an explosion of the suburbs around big cities in this country. And in all of these suburbs, these were mainly made up with people who had moved from the city, and they were adopting a new lifestyle in the suburbs, and that included community swim pools. And community swim pools, just summertime, had leagues of age group swimming. And this spawned just hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of talented swimmers.
That's really interesting, because prior to World War II, it was all amusement parks. There was a lot, there's huge competition pool, Coney Island and Broderick Pool, Ripple Pool, and of that. And then also there was polio was kind of it was a real concern for people to track polio. But was there a waterborne concern?
Well, I think that a lot of parents were very leery of letting their kids go and swim and spend a lot of time in public pools or indoor swimming pools. And swimming was mostly encouraged in the ocean or ponds or lakes and so forth, open swimming.
You grew up in the 30s and 40s, and you're seeing swimming mostly in rivers and lakes?
Just for fun. And there certainly was competitive swimming. It was just that the base was not as anything like what it was after the in the 50s, when age group swimming, all these swimming leagues started, and age group swimming took off.
Let's just put that in perspective for a second. The polio vaccine came out when? Is it early 50s?
Early 50s, I believe.
So with the advent and the introduction of the polio vaccine and the explosion of the post-World War II construction and these pools being built in neighborhoods, it was absolutely, completely right for swimming to explode across the United States.
Absolutely.
So you were really on the forefront of that, and being able to coach in a summer league. You must have saw opportunity everywhere.
Well, I just thought these girls were so eager to go on swimming, and I thought, well, why not start a swimming team?
So you started your own team.
Yeah, and rented space at the Y for an indoor program, and then also a stroke of luck, there was a new pool built in the Fairmount Park in Philadelphia. It was an Olympic-sized pool. Philadelphia was thinking about bidding for an Olympic Games sometime down the road, so that gave a great outdoor pool training facility. It was a public pool, but
and that's an outdoor summer pool, 50-meter course.
Right. And of course the indoor swimming was in small pools. I mean, they were 25 yards, but quite narrow. However, we just did the best we could, and it kept growing, and more. There was developed a girls' league in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia suburbs.
Okay, that you became part of. For a woman to start her own club I don't know how prevalent that was across the country. And was this a parent-run club or?
Well, no, I was pretty arrogant when I was young, and I really wanted to do this on my own. And I was, very fortunate that I was able to organize it. I was able to get time at pools. I was going to try to do this without having a home pool for the club. Because if you try to start a swim club with a pool as part of it, you're necessarily involved with a great many people, parents and boards of directors and all of the apparatus, which I thought I'm going to.
So you're looking for pool space at various locations, a YMCA. You've got
University of Pennsylvania pool, which we started to use when we needed more space.
Let's talk about that. Now, was there one or two pools there?
Well, there were two pools at the university. One was a women's pool, and it wasn't used very much, so I was able to rent.
Can you describe that pool to us?
Oh, it was an oddly shaped pool. It was 25 yards. It had a funny wooden bulkhead at one end, and it was not quite 4 lanes wide. Lane lines were unheard of, and so it was crowded. It took a bit of juggling to get.
So that became one of your home pools for an all-women swim team in the Philadelphia area.
Yes.
You got access to long course water in the summer.
Yes.
And from there you decided to build your program. How did you go about selecting the name?
Oh, well, because my husband was very involved in the Vesper Boat Club in rowing. One of the members of that club said, because we were looking for an umbrella organization for the team, and one of the members of the club suggested, why not let them be part of our club, an autonomous branch of the club, that they'll be the Vesper Boat Club.
Which takes care of your administrative needs and all this?
Yes. Yeah,
oh, wow. Well, it's the first time you mentioned Vesper. And if you go back into old Swimming World magazines back in the early 60s, it was mentioned predominantly. And right up there with Santa Clara, Peter Dalen was in the Philadelphia area, and he went to the Los Angeles Athletic Club, I think it was.
Yes.
And you were vying for national championships, and you cracked it, and you took the national championship in 1961.
Yeah, that was
a crowning moment.
Yes, it was very exciting. Yeah.
With your women. Now, did they score diving and swimming at the time?
Yes, together. And we had one diver. I don't think she contributed any points. We never had a fully developed diving program. And many of them, diving is such a different sport. And of course, now it's really separated.
Yes.
And it was always difficult for the swim coaches to pay attention or give a lot of time and effort to diving. Often they couldn't be in the same venue, and yet the points counted.
But you're not, so you did it all in swimming.
Yes.
And that year you put 2 swimmers on the Olympic team. Right.
Or the year before we won the team championship.
Oh, that's right. So 1960 you put the 2 on the team.
Yes.
So 61 rolls around. And then you've got these women all practicing in a 4-lane pool, and you're producing national champions and Olympians. That's remarkable.
Well, we couldn't wait for May 30th each year to get out of doors, even when it was still cold. Yeah.
How was the coaching fraternity at that time, or I use the word fraternity, the community? But my understanding is it was very male dominant. And was there a sharing of knowledge at the time?
Oh yes. And I have to say, and I sometimes disappoint ardent feminists, because I have to assure people that I never felt harassed, I never felt patronized, I never felt discriminated against. As I came to know the coaches on the national level, it was, as far as I know, I felt as though I was accepted as, again, forgive the expression, one of the guys. I don't know how they saw it, but I felt that I was one of the guys.
Well, you're working and you're showing up every day and you're running practice. And my understanding was that everything went back in the program and you never really drew any type of salary.
Well, one of the things that we, yes, I didn't need to make my living from coaching. And so I wanted the fees that the parents paid to go entirely to the pool rental and to the expenses for the because that made the fees less and more affordable to more families. I don't take any credit for that. That's just simply I was fortunate enough to not be the sole breadwinner.
That is unique, and as much as you want to downplay it, you obviously as an unselfish attitude must have prevailed among the swimmers you were working with, and in the level of the sport must have really shined through. I would have to. I
think that what I really was trying for was that not everyone is going to be a national champion or Olympic swimmer, but if every swimmer that came along and wanted to submit themselves to this rigorous program to try for their individual goals and to become as good as they could possibly be. And one of the things that I tried so hard was to make every swimmer, even the ones who weren't making finals or the national team, but feel that this was something important that they were doing, and that they were part of a team, and also showing themselves that they could do something, and keep improving.
Well, we'll talk about some of those athletes in a few minutes. Now 1964 rolls around, and you have more athletes that you've placed on the team. You were part of the Olympic Committee, and they're going down through the selection process of who's going to be on the Olympic staff. And your name was on that list. But you took your name off that list, and you could have been the first woman ever to be on the Olympic swimming staff, but you decided not to take that role. Why?
Well, again, I wasn't making my living from coaching, and I realized that it would mean so much to the true professionals in the coaching business, far more to them to have an Olympic coach as part of their career credentials and so forth. And so I just didn't want to interfere with that.
Yeah. You're kind of getting mixed signals. You used the word arrogant very early on, on how you ran your program, and then an unselfish act, in your career to be a part of this. If in history now shows it took another 40 years before the first Olympic woman was named. Named to the Olympic staff, and that was in 2004. How do you view that in historical perspectives?
Oh, I think it had so much to do with the times that we lived in. Again, the women's movement was just beginning in the 1960s, and so what I was doing was odd, perhaps, but it wasn't part of any particular movement because I had started in the mid-50s. Then, in fact, after I had stopped coaching, the women's movement is in full spate, and we got Title IX, which expanded the opportunities for women in coaching swimming, and then, in fact, several ex-Vesper swimmers who had not had a chance at coaching when they first ended their swimming careers, but then all sorts of jobs opened up in college, particularly in college coaching.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on those athletes, but in 1968, you decided to walk away from coaching and swimming, and in some ways you kind of took your coach Jim Campbell's original advice, walk away from it and don't look back. and you basically moved the program over to George Breen.
Yes.
And you start another chapter in your life. Was that a hard decision at the time? For the love of swimming?
Yes, it was a hard decision, very hard decision. But it was the right decision, and I thought, and I had 6 children who were approaching teenage, and that's not a time for Mom to be off at swimming meets and coaching, working with other people's children. It was time to pay attention to my own adolescence.
Well, your influence resonates, and still today, they talk about Vesper, which eventually dissolved and it moved into other programs. But the influences that you had over a dozen of your athletes went on to coaching themselves, and I would have to think that you were a real role model for them.
Well, it's nice to think so. They were just a remarkable group of girls and young women that happened to come along in swimming and take up swimming, and I'm just terribly proud of them, all of them, those that went into coaching and those that chose not to.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see you back in the swimming community, being honored at the American Swim Coach Association's Coaching Hall of Fame. Where were you when you got the news that you were going to be inducted in, and what was your reaction?
Oh, astounded! I couldn't quite believe it. I really feel like a dinosaur. 40 years exactly since I had a stopwatch and practically glued to my hand. And
it wasn't a digital stopwatch.
No, oh, heavens, no.
Yeah.
And I really am thrilled, and also I feel very humble and very grateful to all of the people that made this possible, because I wouldn't be here without all of those that went before me and along with me at the time I was coaching.
That's great. Mary, after going through this whole career and hearing, everything that you accomplished and kind of, trendsetter and breaking some barriers in some way, when you look back at it all, is there something else you'd like to share, while you're here with us?
Well, looking back and now seeing the sport as it is now, with all of the changes that have taken place and the technology and so forth, and the swimming is a very different sport, but what hasn't changed is and I can feel the wonderful spirit among the swimmers, among coaches. It's a sport that is it hasn't changed in basic ways of being a wonderful way for young people to grow, express themselves in a marvelous way.
Well, we'd like to express our thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.